So with that, it's 1 o'clock. My name's Tim Wright. Disclosure, I do not work for Oshkosh Corporation, never have. For the past almost 3 decades, I fell in love with the company, been preserving its history for close to 3 decades. My first experience, my first ride in Oshkosh was in 1978, whenever I was 6 years old. I'm kind of pleased to report that that truck that I rode in 1978 is now part of my collection. I was able to acquire that back in April of this year, so I don't have any slides of that in here. Well, maybe I do. But the main point is I don't work for the company. Everything that will be presented is stuff that I've learned over the years. I'm not an expert by no means. If somebody has something else that may be out there, please speak up, because that's all about history. You know, we're recorders and reporters of history. I want to get it right, but again, I don't know everything. So if there's something out there, and encourage you to speak up. Let's talk about it. Let's share what we have, and then we learn together, because again, I'm not an expert and I wasn't born during the war, so I have no clue. I will share that the next slide, this is dedicated to Clarence Inky Unworth. If you owned an Oshkosh, you know who Clarence was. Clarence was a long-term engineer. He worked for the company 72 years, went to work for him in September 4th, 1945, after he returned from the war. So he rose through the ranks, become chief engineer back in the day, worked on a lot of these trucks, built a lot of these trucks, knew every nut, bolt, and cranny about these trucks. So Inky and I were best friends for over 20 years before, unfortunately, we lost him in January of 2018 at the ripe age of 98 years old. So we're going to talk about Oshkosh truck manufacturing during the war years. During World War II, one of the key things about Oshkosh is they didn't have to build to the government specs that were already in use. They were already building this truck prior to the war. This truck is what I call one of the famous trucks. It's a W709 truck. They were already producing the W series during the war. One of the key aspects, again, they didn't have to build per military spec, per government spec, kind of like their competitors did. FWD had to build per the military spec. A lot of the Sterling trucks and everything else had to build per military spec. Oshkosh did not. They never entered into an agreement that said that they had to sell exclusively to the United States government also. They were still able to use county trucks. So this is what the plant looked like. During the war effort, you'll see all those nice, pretty trucks lined up for battle. They had built three different versions of these trucks over the years. Key was again, they were already proven and tried trucks during the day. So this is the back of a brochure, just a color photo from the black and white photo. The back of the page of the brochure. One of the key things is there's a wonderful gentleman out there who I've become really good friends with, a guy by the name of David Jackson. David helped me, and we worked together, collaborated on this, and some of the information and some of the photos in here will be from David Jackson. He was a lifesaver on some of the information that I needed to complete this. This was released, public knowledge again. It's got more trucks in here, but if you look up here, the Oshkoshes, a 7.5 ton truck, 6x6 prime mover. They never did really build any 6x6s for them, but this is what the government contract had said. This come out of Milwaukee. I was able to contact and get these numbers out of here. And it's interesting, until I met David, I really didn't know how many trucks were built. If you look, one was built 75, one was built 76. But when you look down here on this sheet, and it's pretty cool, can't remember the 151, but then I can't remember some of the other manufacturers on there. But yeah, so this is one of the sheets that was declassified to where we could actually look at this. With David's help, David's hard work and determination on this, David is the one that come up with the years and what trucks were built. Pretty impressive. 1940, prior to the war, 110 trucks. 1941, 120. You can look at this. By then, they were mass producing them. In the early years, one of the reason why the numbers were down, they were still selling to townships in Wisconsin, and they were still selling to other companies. David also cracked the code on the serial numbers, which really helps when I run across a truck that we're not for sure on the serial number range, and it really helped identify a 1943 that a friend of mine, we went in together on it. So we do have a snowblower out there that was built during the war for the war effort. Here's kind of a breakdown per David on the cost of what the production was during World War II production. It's impressive. $5 million in a contract that was paid for by the military for Oshkosh to build these trucks for wartime production. And it was published by the Civilian Product Administration Industrial Statistics Division. So here we go. We're going to get into the W709. Like I said, there was 3 series that were made. There was a tractor, there was a plow, and then there was also a snowblower. One of the things that is instrumental about here is if you look, there's a W709 CT5. There's a W709 C17. These are manuals that are actually part of my collection. The CT5 was a truck hauler. It actually had a fifth wheel, and they would use it as a cargo hauler. Some of the key aspects, I love old war manuals, is it actually talks about the United States contract, the contract number, which then leads you down a rabbit hole of trying to pull that information out of some of the repositories. Another one, C10, W709, that's also in my collection. Pretty cool, the manuals that were back in the day. Here's another, this one here was for the U.S. engineers. This was a contract for them. As I'd stated previously, they were building them. So these are prior to World War I. There's the W900, there's the W904. Spec sheets, I thought it was very cool that even in the early 40s, Oshkosh was putting color to most of their spec sheets. I do not have a 907 spec sheet. I have not, in the almost 3 decades of preserving the history, I've not been able to locate one yet, but I'm sure it's out there. 709s really supported the war effort. This is in the Pacific, in the Philippines. Clarence served in the Philippines. He was one of the, his unit was one of the first ones to have engagement in battle with the Japanese during World War II in the Philippines. One thing that Clarence always talked about was the P-38s flying overhead. Before he passed away, I was able to get these photos from Time Life and from books and share these with him. And he was never at this port to serve. He was an island hopper in the Philippines, New Guinea, Buna, and all those places. So whenever I was able to share these photos with him, this is an Oshkosh. They used it for cranes, hauling it from one part of the town to the other. Not for sure. The only thing that I can only assume, because there was no information with these photos, is they were coming in off the ships and then they're hauling them through town and putting them together at the Air Force Base so they could see battle. I'm sure that was an interesting sight. I'm still hopeful that there's more pictures from the ground level instead of somebody standing on top of the roof taking these. So these were the CT5s. These were the transport trucks that were fifth wheel that could pull a trailer. P-38s? And P-38s, yep. This was over in the Philippines. They were hauling them, putting them on a ship, taking them to the Philippines, and then unloading them over there. So this was over in a museum in the Netherlands. This is one of those trucks. It's the CT5. This was a photo I acquired from the internet. This is a David Jackson photo here. The truck, I'm proud to report that it's back home. I'll have to look at my notes and refer to them. It's actually out in Idaho, at a museum out there. These are all David's pictures. So the 12,000 300 pounds. Length was 19 feet long. Height was 9'4", and 7'11" on the width. These are all photos from David's trip to this museum whenever it got back here into the States. Have not made it out there. I will make it out there to go view this truck in person. Another good friend of mine was just recently out there, sent me some wonderful photos inside the cab. Just pretty rudimentary. I always wondered, and I've always questioned, what was different from the trucks that they were building for civilian use and for the townships, and what was actually built for the military. I've not run across a civilian-built truck during that time frame. It's close as 47 that's sitting out in the parking lot. It's close, but it's not from 41 to 45 to compare what it done. You know, Ross was a very, very good steering gear company back in the day that was put into these trucks. This is pretty cool. This was the highlight whenever I got this from David Jackson. I'll see if I can't get this. That's pretty cool. For that truck to be out there under its own power. So I'm excited to get out there and see this truck in person.
You don't know where the museum is, though?
I had it in my notes, but I would have to rethink where that is exactly. But yeah, even the gauge cluster was pretty simple. It was pointed out that back whenever they were built, there was usually 2 fuel tanks, one on each side. This one has had its fuel tank removed. This is another one that surfaced not too long ago, another C5, but it's a dump body that was used for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Still had its original paint. This come up to auction in Kansas a couple years ago, and unfortunately I was not successful on bidding on it. I do know where the truck is, and I've had communications with the gentleman that owns the truck. It's nice to see that there's a war survivor still out there. This is the iconic badge. If you go out here and look at this 47, that's the iconic badge in the late 30s, early 40s, and into the 50s. What I thought was impressive is it was all painted, and not all of them were painted the OD green or whatever the military color was back in the day. The orange snowblower truck that I actually am partners with is orange, and it was painted orange, and it was never painted OD green. If anybody can crack this 5-digit code for me, I would love to hear from you. It's one of the things, other than the 5 at the beginning of it represents, you know, the 5 tons. Extremely rare. And this is why I would really love to look at a truck that they built for the county. It's got a heater in it. Don't know how well it worked, not sure who made the heater, but I wonder if some of these trucks weren't already purposed for some county plows, and early on they decided that we needed to go ahead and send some of these to the military to start fulfilling some of the contract. They used the Continental 22R. To my knowledge, and this has been a group discussion between David Jackson and a couple others, you know, did they always have the Continental 22R on them? As far as I know, they did. One of the things, unfortunately, is Oshkosh Corporation, Oshkosh Truck, during their World War II production, didn't keep very good records. When Clarence was alive, we tried our best to find records, locate records, and all the years that he worked there, he was unable to find anything on the World War II production. It's kind of like it didn't happen, but it did happen.
Is that a 5-cylinder?
Yes.
I see 5 plugs.
Yep. No, yeah, you're right. There's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the 6th one's right there. So this is the C15. This was the snowblower version. This one come out of Idaho. Not for sure on the truck's history, but we do know that it is from 1943. It's setting up at a friend's house in Clintonville. It's at Daryl's house.
What's the power on the back of it?
SnowGo. So this was serial number 1826. Top speeds 20 miles an hour, 29 miles an hour. Again, used for the Corps of Engineers. The snowblower itself was made by SnowGo. This was another one that surfaced not too long ago. Unfortunately, the gentleman that owned this had passed away. And I'm not for sure what the family ended up doing with it. And again, as I said, I'm not an expert on it. I know a lot about it. There's still a lot more research to do and needs to be done on these, but I'm not for sure where this one actually ended up. Same configuration. I believe this may be the original collar. And again, it was used for the U.S. Corps of Army Engineers. The gentleman that I had actually try and get a picture of the data plate, he never did send me a clear, good photo of it. So one of the things that I thought was very interesting, you know, during the war, everybody was saving everything. Everybody didn't want to use a lot of stuff. War bonds were issued during the war. I was impressed that during the war, Oshkosh was actually still printing paper and still getting it out there. They had quite a few ads over the years to talk about defense, snow removal, and construction. A lot of the ads that you see during World War II won't have all three of those in there because, again, they were able to sell still privately and not to the military. I think that thing is sharp. Not for sure. The snowplow, and I'm trying to remember if it's actually in there who built that snowplow. But as you can see, it looks like that would do some snow, or probably didn't work very well. And I've not seen one of these to date out there. Anybody know the manufacturer of that snowplow? I want to say it's a Snow King because that's what's written on the side of the truck, but 100% I'm not a Snow King expert. Here's the ones that you've seen in the Philippines.
Question?
Yes.
This era of truck in the 40s, are these, did Oshkosh make them all, they're all front drive axles? All wheel drive?
They were, yes.
Okay, they didn't make a non-drive front axle?
No, not during that time frame. To my knowledge, no, they had not. It's a great question. This is one of the trucks that we own together, and you've seen pictures of. This is a SnowGo. You know, Alcon Highway, snow basis. It would love to find a list of where all these trucks had went. There are some mass truck production records, microfilms out there. Unfortunately, most of them have either been thrown away, destroyed, and not in use anymore. Clarence did have a set, but unfortunately, the from 41 to 45 were missing in the set.
Any idea how much power is in a motor on the back? Or what type of motor it is even?
I believe it was a Continental just like what was up in front. That's pushing some snow. I'm glad we don't have snow like that for those that live in the snow belt. Who lives in the snow belt? Would y'all want to see snow like that again?
If I was still skiing.
Yeah. Or if that's what you did for a business. During the war, one of the things, of course, which was short of supply was employees. You know, most of the men at that age were off doing wartime, heading the war, and then I was able to find through newspaper articles, articles where Oshkosh was actually advertising for employees at the time. I always thought this was a neat little advertisement for the businesses in Oshkosh. Of course, you can see that Oshkosh is listed in here, but these were all Oshkosh companies that were providing for the war effort. And I'm sure most of them work together. I know Triangle Manufacturing and Oshkosh Motor Truck work together. Help wanted. Boy, if you knew how to do anything, they would probably take you. The only thing I don't see on those is janitorial. And one of the key things that I'm still trying to figure out too is just how many employees Oshkosh had on staff during the war efforts. Clarence come in 1945, and I think he said that there was only like 99 employees for the company at the time whenever he started. So everybody during this whole production and everything, it was a family company. Everybody knew everybody, everybody helped each other. Again, all kinds of ads talking about retirement. And I'm not for sure about the Employment Service Office. This was new to me, so that's one of the other things that I still need to go through and I need to research. Is what was the employment office? Not for sure. I figured during this time that if you walked up to the factory front door that they would just let you in and probably put you to work the minute that you walked in the door. So this is another one of those snow blowers that I've always kind of wondered, always kind of questioned. To me, doesn't look like it's very effective. And maybe that was for the heavier snow, deeper snow, just to get a path through so the other snow plows could come in. But what was also interesting is they also had a dealer network throughout the 40s. Unfortunately, none of these dealers are no longer in existence. I do have quite a bit of information on Nuttall and Tinklepaw that was out east. Those are really two big dealers that were selling Oshkosh trucks back in the day. One of my favorite ads from 1944. I'll give everybody a second to read it. And the key on the bottom of it, I love that little saying, is the government has recently authorized us to build a limited number of trucks for civilian purchase. Great photo. The only photo that I know to exist in the ad, this was the plant. These are all Oshkosh's ready for the war. These were the CT5s, the CT10s. No blowers in the picture. And again, just another example that, Emmett County was able to buy a commercial truck. Another nice sales ad from Oshkosh. I could find some old magazine ads out there. So this was very awesome for companies to receive. It was called the E Award. The United States government gave these out to all the companies that were helping. Oshkosh received one during their war effort. So whenever you received your first flag, it was just a blank flag. That was your first flag. So then after you received each additional award, they would put a star on it. There were companies that had 5 stars, the flag plus 4 stars on the flag. Not for sure. I've always inquired about maybe where the flag had went for Oshkosh Corporation. Nobody seemed to know. Clarence didn't seem to know. But yeah, they were always giving out presentations, and somebody from the military. So some of the people would come, or people from the military would come and actually make a presentation of this. Here's a presentation of that day. This, at the time, was B.A. Mosling, Barnhard Mosling. He was the president at the time. one of the original co-founders of the company. This was his son-in-law, Jack Morton, in the background. Jack was married to BA's daughter. The cool thing is you'll see this truck back here, that's a TR. There's only one known to still exist, and it's out east in the Boston area. They were built in the 30s and 40s as prime movers. It's a very unique truck. So as the military come in, each company gave their employees a nice certificate to celebrate their milestone and their help. This gentleman was Arnold Thiel. One of the cool things and I love World War II pinbacks. I know the grandson of this, or the great-grandson of this gentleman. I said, man, that looks like a mugshot of your great-grandfather. He agrees. But this is what Oshkosh, and they all did it. FWD back in the day, they all had buttons that they had to wear in the plant to make sure that no secrets were being leaked, and it was a government requirement at the time that everybody have a photo ID. So this is cool. Yeah, I was a lot skinnier back then. But in 2017, for the company's 100th anniversary, I was invited up, had 18 tables of display of my memorabilia, my history. That's my son, that's myself, and that's Clarence. What a trooper. We picked him up at 7 a.m. at his house, and we didn't drop him back off until 7 a.m. This was in July of 2017, and we didn't drop him back off until 7 that night. He was the living legend. He was the living history. Thousands of people walked in front of us that day, looked at the items. It was interesting to have Clarence there to talk about all this stuff and to talk about his experiences through the years with Oshkosh. So that's what was taken. This here, another dedication towards the end of the presentation. This is William Besserdick's granddaughter, Shyla Stamps. The family wasn't invited to the 100th anniversary because nobody in the company knew that they still existed. I didn't know that the family of the Besserdick family existed until 2017, right after the event. I actually met them, become instant friends, and started to help them with their history of William and his accomplishments and contributions to the four-wheel drive system. Shyla, we lost her a few years back to a rare disease, the great-grandson of William. If you want to hear more exciting earlier Oshkosh history stuff, he'll be giving the presentation from me that on Saturday here. So he's coming in from the Twin Cities to give this presentation. I'm going to share these photos. These are rare photos that just surfaced not too long ago. Everybody, if you don't know the iconic Old Betsy, you can find it online. The very first truck of Oshkosh produced. This is it. Doesn't look like this today. When they drove it from Milwaukee, it looked different. But one of the key factors, and this is Cheryl Besserdick, William's son. He was very instrumental in the early years of the company. I recently, before Shyla passed away, purchased a photo album out of Indiana, of all places. I had it up in the Twin Cities, and they were looking through it, and she goes, "Oh my God, there's Uncle Cheryl." So these are pretty cool photos. But here, this is a very rare photo. This was in the photo album. This is B.A. Mosling, one of the co-founders of the company. This is his father, John. This is Cheryl Besserdick. And this gentleman right here is William Besserdick. So those are the family members that started Oshkosh Truck. This guy back here, don't ask me how I know it, but that's A.C. Miller. He was the secretary type treasurer of the company back in 1917, whenever it was founded. So I haven't released this photo to the public 100%. It's here in the presentation, but also the company and I are trying to plan something special for this photo because it does capture both families in the photo. Oh, I do have it in there. So this is my truck. I forgot that I had put it in there. So this is what started it all. Now this is part of my private collection. 1978, my son Austin's the one in the driver's seat driving it. So 3 generations have served on this truck, my father, myself, and my son. So it's nice to have that in the family history. There's my email and phone number, but also part of this presentation, if I can get it to work right, and I may have to. Forgot to get this prepared. Oh. No sound, but I can do a tap and dance if y'all would like. So this is the plant during World War II.
Are they still on those grounds today?
They are.
That's Oregon Street, right?
It is Oregon Street. That was the company's headquarters up until a few years ago. But that is they still do manufacturing in the second building. This was in the hands of a private individual. It was an old 8mm film that I was able to add to the rest of the history that I've been able to preserve. Whenever I had it digitized, I was just blown away.
Was Oshkosh involved in World War I then?
They were not.
Early trucks?
They were not. The company was founded in May 1st, 1917. And come back Saturday morning and Chad will be able to tell you all about that part of it. I want to know who laid on the ground to videotape this. This is impressive. The company called me and asked me if I'd like audio sound to this because it didn't have any to it. And I said, no, just let it play. Another fire truck built for the city of Oshkosh. So all these trucks were all built during World War II. This hill's no longer there. It was just south of Oregon Street that would cross the railroad tracks. Now it's all flat. The company is back to the right.
That was Highway 26.
Thank you. So there were 3 of these built for the city of Oshkosh. One was destroyed during a traffic accident in the city. I do have newspaper articles on it. The other one that was up in Michigan has kind of disappeared from sight, and then there's another one out in Idaho that I know of. And I've tried to acquire that one. I'm still under time, so we'll watch a little bit more videos and then we'll ask some questions. Why not watch some videos? And that's still the W7 series. Sorry, I did not provide the popcorn. And I don't think any of the trucks that are made today for county governments to plow snow could ever push the snow that they pushed back in the day. Nothing against the current trucks. I'd enjoy it for about an hour. Not for sure what the gentlemen with the shovels were doing. I don't think they're helping very much. And just imagine the roads back then. We think our potholes are bad now.
How fast is he going there? You can sped up a little bit.
Probably 20, 25.
It was hard to go that fast in those.
Yeah. All that work just to have that much of the road plowed open.
They'll have to go through. Yeah.
These are all V blades.
They are V-blades. And thank you, Darren. These are plows back then. Wausau was made. Wausau, Wisconsin made the majority of them. Some of them were Root, R-O-O-T, but the majority of them come from Wausau.
So what year did the, what year did the augers and blowers come into play?
You know, the augers and blowers had really been in play since the 30s. It wasn't until the 40s they really started to hone in. Snogo was a big manufacturer out of Dubuque, Iowa. Root also made some blowers for them.
So did Oshkosh make their own implements?
They did not. They had other companies make those. This one here was Snogo, and this one was made out of Dubuque. So what majority of the time what would happen is they do the chassis and the frame, either drive it, ship it, and then the implements would be put on at the facility.
But not like now where, hey, you can get the truck, but you can only put 2 engines in it.
Yeah,
You can put whatever you wanted on your chassis.
you could.
A lot of the plows, things they get now are from Chilton.
Yeah, from MB Companies out of Chilton, Wisconsin. Or Monroe, just a little south of here. If you want to see some of those implements, the gentleman drove in yesterday. He's got Monroe snowplows on his truck out in the parking lot. So this is a cool photo. This is the battleship. It's the second vehicle produced by FWD. It was the successful. That is the battleship. That is the Stamps family. That's Chad, the great-grandson of William Besserdick. Shyla is in the middle of her grandsons. It's her grandkids. Unfortunately, now they're all grown up, and Faye's the last one to graduate high school. But yeah, this was in 2017. I was blessed to drive.
That car still drives.
The car still drives. And it is up in the FWD Museum in Clintonville. Questions?
The other comment, this car is gonna be at the Iola this year.
Will it be at Iola?
They have a four-wheel drive deal, and this car is going up there.
Great. So for those that live in Wisconsin, I would go to Iola and see this vehicle.
What's FWD's connection to Oshkosh?
If you come Saturday, you'll learn more, but I will tell you. So William Besserdick and his brother-in-law started, they were in Clintonville, and they started the Badger four-wheel drive company together. So they were brother-in-laws. William, to my knowledge, to everything that I have read and everything that I understand, until I can be proven differently, William is the one that was out on a couple miles north of Clintonville and Embarrass, and asked two gentlemen to get out and pull the spokes on what was a Rio car back then that he was driving. The other story is out there is Otto was down in Appleton somewhere with the Rio, got down in a ravine, couldn't go up forward, so he spun around and went up backwards. Not for sure. Those are the two stories early on throughout the early history up until about 1937, and it's documented in the Clintonville history book that the story that I had just kind of explained about William asking the two gentlemen in the 40s, that story started to change. So
Is that a full-time, always four-wheel drive?
it is. Very interesting to drive. It was cool to drive the streets of Clintonville and the same roads that the two brother-in-laws drove this vehicle. One of the key things is if you go to Clintonville, the machine shop is still there. And I'll talk about this tomorrow in my early FWD history presentation tomorrow. The machine shop's still there. It is part of the museum. It doesn't have any equipment in there, but I would still encourage you to go view it, go see it, because this is the birthplace of the four-wheel drive. Yes, sir.
Let's see, who was Oshkosh's biggest competitors in the early days, and when did they get their first government contracts? When did they hook up with the government?
In the 40s, during World War II, is whenever they first had their contracts. It wasn't until 53 that they ended up receiving their largest contract. It was for the Air Force. All the testing was done out at Loring Air Force Base, and that actually saved the company from bankruptcy. That contract alone. It was for the WT-2206. Good friend of mine, James Menard, wrote a complete Bible on the history, or he called it Cold War fighters, on the WT-2206. I helped with that book. I'd encourage anybody to go online. You can buy it on Amazon, eBay. It's about that thick, and it's the complete Bible on the WT-2206s. That contract is what really got the ball rolling for the military contracts for the military. They built the truck so good, but then they wanted to update them from the House God engines, and they wanted to go diesel and repower them, so they were sending them back to Oshkosh in the 60s, 70s, and 80s to have these trucks repowered. I actually do own a WT-2206. It's part of my collection. I don't have the dump body on it, but they were also made as plow trucks and blowers. They had either the Frank rollover plow or the blower on them. Workhorses. And some of them are still in use and still being used at airports up in just north of here, northern, what's the Air Force base that was in northern Wisconsin?
Oh, north. I was thinking Troy.
Yeah, anyway, the KI Storia is one that they're using it in. I didn't do it, I promise. But K.I. Sawyer has still a couple of WT-2206s that are being used. The last run rolled off the remanufacture line about 82, 83. A good friend of mine worked on that line. And we have a picture of the old, and it was a snow blower that come off the line.
A lot of counties and townships also repowered their trucks with diesel.
They did. Probably the largest private group that has Oshkosh is still in use, and they have county plow trucks or contracts is Green Lake, and I always botch it. Copeland and there we go. Takes some Wisconsin people to say it for me correctly. But yeah, they have the largest stock of Oshkosh trucks, and they still use it today.
Sitting in their front yard.
Yes,
And then, so did Oshkosh ever make their own powertrains at all?
they did. Yep, the 60s and 70s they did. It was called the Powermatic. For a long time they did also, and then everything's commercialized and.
Did they buy their axles exclusively from Rockwell though?
They made their own, and then they also bought them from Rockwell as well, since Rockwell was right there in
Well, they
Oshkosh.
built that plant there, I think specifically for.
They did.
truck.
And then through the years, like all manufacturers, they ended up using through the years some of the International Harvester cabs. Oshkosh never used Dodge cabs, but there were other companies that used Dodge cabs. And today it's Cincinnati cabs is who they use. Back when these were being built in the 40s, it was Highland cab company. The majority of the cabs that were used during the 40s were wooden. If you go out here and you look at this 47 that's out on our lot or out on the showgrounds right now, it has a wooden cab.
What is the lifespan on those?
Some of them are, they're still, some of them are still in good shape. The 709 that I'm partners in, we're going to have to do some work on the wood. I was hoping that the gentleman that brought the 47 was going to be in here, but I think he got tied up talking to people. Any other questions? Yes?
What do you have in your collection?
What's that?
What do you have in your collection?
I've got a 1927 Model H, a 1939 FCX. Those are both snow plows. I've got a 1952 W712, which was a U.S. Navy plow truck. A 50, I'm trying to remember what year the WT-2206 was built, but it was in the 50s, repowered in the 80s. The M1500's a 1978. I just recently got rid of my 1940 FWD town of Dellerfield fire truck. I've got a 1965 FWD open cab that served the city of St. Louis. I know I'm missing one, but yeah. And about half of them run. So, and I've got a couple on my wish list that I keep close to my heart that I don't want anybody else to come in and beat me out on it. But yeah, there's an open cab old Oshkosh fire truck that I'm very interested in.
I got a question for you.
Yes,
I came in
Darren.
late.
What's that?
I came in late, so maybe you mentioned this, but what are a couple of the other early Oshkosh innovations that they're noted for?
The double reduction axle, in the mid 20s. The Model H was that double reduction, and I can tell the Models A's, double A's, B's, C's, and all those, I can tell they're earlier than 1927 because of that double reduction axle that's out there. My 1927 Model H does have that double reduction axle. So to kind of go back to answer your FWD question too, though, about the brother-in-laws, they applied for the patent early on in the early 1900s and received it. They built their first vehicle, which was a steamer, and in Wisconsin, the steamer didn't do well, so they remodified it, got a Continental engine, which is in the battleship, and they used pieces and parts off the steamer to build this truck. And there'll be more on that tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. Hopefully I didn't put you to sleep, and
9 o'clock tomorrow?
I think so.